Welcome back. Let's check in with Professor Richard Wolff, the economist, co-founder of Democracy at Work, democracyatwork.info, and his their website, rdwolf.com, author most recently of Capitalism's Crisis Deepens, Essays on the Global Economic Meltdown. You can also tweet him at Prof. Wolff, Profwolff. Richard Wolff, Professor Wolff, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
Great to have you with us. I had two large questions for you, and then, you know, anything you wanted to rant about or talk about today, I'm up for. But the first is, we've got on the one side, on the classic Republican side, lots and lots of hysteria about the national debt. Even, you know, when Ronald Reagan came into office, the national debt was about $800 billion. It wasn't even $1 trillion. And the Republicans were like, this is going to be the end of the republic. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the modern monetary theorists who are gaining some purchase in the mindset of American economists, who are saying that, you know, well, the national debt is actually savings, by and large, in the private sector. It's you know, if the federal government doesn't provide a safe place for people to put their savings, then you have a very unstable system, as we saw in the 1830s when Andrew Jackson paid off the national debt and produced the largest and deepest depression in the history of the United States. So what's the real story on the national debt, in your opinion, sir?
Well, you know, you're quite right that the Republicans have made a career for many, many decades using, and I use that word intentionally, using the problem of a national debt as an excuse. They can't say honestly that they want to cut social programs for the mass of people out of an ideological commitment, which I believe is the truth. It sounds much better to be doing something that you can claim is for the good of everybody, and not having the government go too deeply into debt sounds terribly reasonable, and therefore is something that the Republicans and the conservatives in the Democratic Party, too, can wrap themselves up in. So they're doing good things when they are, in fact, cutting government spending on all kinds of social programs that people need. So, yes, it's been a phony issue all along. And so the Keynesians, the liberals in American politics, have usually come back and said, well, yeah, the deficit is a problem for a while, but it's an important problem to have because in the long run, we better spend the money that keeps our society together, that takes care of the people that the private sector neglects or forces to live below the poverty line, et cetera, and using government money for that, even if it's borrowed, is a worthwhile purpose and will, in the long run, be better for the economy than not doing it.
Well, and Keynes
usually like to point to the Great Depression as having been that kind of a situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Keynes was also saying during times of economic slowdown, you raise the national debt to stimulate the economy. During times of rip-roaring prosperity, you pay down the national debt, right?
Exactly. My only quarrel, and I understand the technical issues of the modern monetary theory, they are quite right. Money is created by banks in the normal course of what they do. That, by the way, introduces as much instability, that fact, as it resolves. But I think they sometimes kind of go too far because, in fact, there's no way around it. If the government has to pay off massive debts, the way the government is going to have to do with the debts run up since the crash of 2008, it will, in fact, be pressing on people, individuals, and businesses to raise the money to pay back those loans. So for me, I always wonder in my mind, why? Basically, why is the government borrowing money? And here's the issue that I think people have to come to terms with. The government is right now borrowing at an enormous clip again. But there is no mystery why it is doing that. It has to do with the fact that last December, this Trump Republican government gave business an unbelievable tax cut, thereby depriving the government of an enormous amount of revenue. At the same time, they spent a little bit more because they didn't dare not do that in the face of this enormous gift to corporations and wealthy people. And the only reason the government has to borrow is because it gave that enormous tax cut to these wealthy people and to these already richer than ever corporations. If they hadn't have done that, then they wouldn't need to expand the deficit now. And here comes the clincher. Ask yourself the question, from whom is the government going to borrow all of this money that it needs to borrow because it's not taxing corporations and the rich? And the answer to the question is the corporations and the rich. The irony here is that the government is borrowing money from the people who have that money to lend because the same government isn't taxing them anymore. In effect, what the government here did was to say to corporations and the rich, you don't have to pay taxes. Instead, we're going to get the money from you in a different way. We're going to borrow it. We're going to pay you interest for the time that we borrow it. And then X years from now, we're going to give it all back to you. There's no then surprise that corporations and the rich love this arrangement, love to talk about it as stabilizing this or that, actually make use of the modern monetary theorists, even though those tend to be more on the left than on the right of our political spectrum, because in effect, running a deficit this way is an enormous gift to corporations and the rich.
That's remarkable. I mean, I'm curious what you think about Ellen Brown's suggestion that the Constitution specifically gives, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress the right to determine the value of money and to mint coins, and that while the Federal Reserve prints our paper money, the coins in your pocket, the quarters, nickels, and dimes, are actually Treasury Department. They're actually U.S. government money. And the government gets to say that, you know, that thing that you think is a quarter is worth $0.25, 25 cents. They could just as easily say it's worth $5,000 or $50,000. They can assign any value they want to it. And that the federal government could easily mint, say, 10 $1 trillion platinum coins, bring that $10 trillion into being by doing that, and then use those $10 trillion to redeem debt with the Fed, or redeem debt, I guess, with the Treasury Department, to pay off $10 trillion of the national debt. And the argument that she made of why this would not be inflationary or destructive to the country is that, for example, in 2008, the Fed created $27 trillion out of thin air and distributed it all over the world to billionaires and rich people. The quantitative easing has been something on the order of $6 or $7 trillion, I believe. You would know the numbers better than me, but it's been huge. And that these trillions of dollars going into the economy and coming back out of the economy are now, in this modern era, you know, not that large a chunk of money that they're going to debase the currency. What do you think about that? Or is that just a wild, out there theory?
No, it's not wild at all. It's a recognition of a very simple reality, which is you only have an inflation if there's an imbalance between the amount of money in circulation looking to buy things in relationship to the amount of things that are there looking to be sold. If you manage it properly, you can always control the quantity of money so that it has the relationship to the things people use money to buy that keeps prices of each item roughly stable over periods of time. The problem is, who's going to do that? And the only logical thing would be for the government, an entity that at least theoretically represents all of us and what we need as a community. The government ought to do it. But private banks don't want that. They don't want to lose the very lucrative situation they have, that they can make money for themselves off of controlling the monetary system. They don't want to give that over to the government, even though for us as the mass of people, it is literally crazy to allow something so important for all of us as the money supply, the conditions of money in our economy, to be in the hands of people who are not there entrusted with what's good for all of us, but who are there pursuing their private profit. That's been the critique from day one of the absurd way that this is done. It's as if we didn't have the army in the hands of the government that theoretically represents us, but had lots of little armies looking to make money off of their arminess rather than serving the public purpose. We are now allowing the public purpose of the money we all rely on to be in the hands of people who tell you honestly when you ask them that their bottom line, their first priority, is the private profit of the bank and the lenders, etc., who control the money supply. There's the fundamental irrationality before you even get to the issue of the deficit.
Yeah, remarkable stuff. We'll have to pick up our conversation about slavery next week or down the road.
All right.
But it's because we're out of time. But Professor Richard Wolff, it's always an honor and a pleasure to talk with you, sir. Thank you.
Same thing. Thank you very much.
Great having you with us. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolff and the website democracyatwork.info or rdwolff with 2fs.com. We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls after this.